tre, en, två, tre.
Hi, it's working. It's too loud, maybe, or is it right? Very poetical. That too much? A bit less? No, less. Oh, how about that? Fair enough. There, the last row, everything all right? Perfect. It's a bit too much still for me. How about that? Good. Thanks a lot. Then thanks for coming. First of all, I would like to thank, of course, definitely Lund University for this occasion to be here with you. Of course, to Vice Chancellor Professor Victor Öval. Sorry for the mispronunciation. My Swedish is not too doesn't go too far. To Nora Carlson, Professor Stacy Ristinma Sørensen, Professor Henrik Ram, and of course Senior Lecturer Ingela Johansson, and Professor Miguel Cornejo Herrera. Thanks for everything. It's a really pleasure to be here in Lund to all of you. Thanks a lot also to the Peruvian Embassy and Mr. Waldo Ortega on behalf of the Peruvian Embassy. It's a real great pleasure to be here, and thanks to all of you which made this possible. And then, of course, thanks to you all who are here, especially my friend Inga Enquist coming here. Thanks a lot for coming here. This is a great honor for me to have you here in this colloquium, which is a convivium. Also, thanks a lot, Inga. And thanks a lot of you all for being here this evening. I mean, as Borges said, that in a lecture, in any class, it's a two-side thing. And this is the the hearers are a really main part of it. So it's in a way it's a colloquium. First time it's me only speaking, then I hope also some questions, whatever. And thanks a lot because you all as listeners here make all of this celebration of happy birthday to Sologuren, his 100 years, make this celebration possible. So let's take it as a big 100-year party celebration for Sologuren. Uh, we are tonight with this as a part of a Scandinavian tournée on Sologuren. I started in Stockholm, then it was Uppsala, and now it's Lund. And it's all from the Peruvian side, part of this great commemoration of 200 years of Peru, which also coincides, it goes together with the 100 years of Sologuren. So apart from that, apart from this coincidence, it's really great to celebrate Peru through this outstanding Peruvian, which is also Peruvian for the world, who is Javier Sologuren. Let me just special, also particular commemoration, celebration for me. And then there's a literary thing in Sweden, also with a round year. 50 years ago, exactly in 1971, the great, amazing writer Álvaro Cunqueiro from Mondoñedo, Lugo, Spain, came to Sweden, invited by the university, I think it was in Stockholm. He came here to give some lectures on Spanish literature. He enjoyed it all. He came also with his friend Nestor Lujan, also writer. They were both great, also great connoisseurs in gastronomy, and they enjoyed a lot being in Stockholm. I saw some also some this pictures at the bridge here, and now it's 50 years ago. And also, apart from this great celebration, so good on my part, I'm really happy to be 50 years again after that, uh, commemorating the passing of Álvaro Cunqueiro through Sweden, a passing which he enjoyed a lot, as he said in his writings. Well, Sweden is the country, apart from Peru, in which there will be more celebrations about Sologuren. Of course, logically Peru, but then it comes Sweden. And well, probably many of you already know about that. He, the reason why it's especially celebrated here is Lund, because Javier Sologuren came to Lund in 1950. And I think I was speaking to the head Professor Victor that sure Lund has for a long, long time these programs, these interests in exchanges with the world. Because imagine this is nowadays lots of programs, but in 1950, the University of Lund had a program with the Colegio de Mexico. They did this great institution, and it was ruled at the time by Alfonso Reyes and Raimundo Lida. And there was this young Sologuren, which is 29, and he was one of the best students there, researchers. And said, Raimundo Lida went, Sologuren, you're a very good student, and you can do great things. There's a chance you may go to a place in Europe. It's a bit cold, but I think you will enjoy it. It's Lund. I said, all right. So probably were already some years doing these exchanges with the Colegio de Mexico, which is a great idea on both sides. And thanks to this, your idea of connecting people all over the world, Javier Sologuren could come here. And definitely it was a really milestone in his life because before coming to this, he spent 7 years here in Lund as a lecturer of Spanish. Before coming here, he was a student, a researcher, and in a way, a boy, because he had only been 3 years abroad from Lima, and also in a Spanish-speaking country, the same culture. And then he came here, and his life changed completely. Here, he started teaching, and by the way, I'll tell you, he was very shy. So here, he started to let's just overcome this shyness and become a professor. Many of us have passed through that, being a lecturer. But not only that, of course, he learned Swedish, and he found love. That's not a small thing. He found love in the person of Kerstin Åkesson, and he found a family. He married Kerstin, and he had 3 children. The first one was born here, and then what comes Gerardo, and then Viveka and Claudio, who makes us the honor of being here with us, which were, of course, Swedish Peruvian or Peruvian Swedish. So it's what, Viveka. I'm so happy. Thanks a lot. Tak, tak, tak. Thanks a lot for coming. Then, Stu, you see, this the great, biggest part of the personal Salvadoran heritage is here with us. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the honor of coming here. So he changed from being a son to being a father, having his own family, and of course, he met a completely different world with another language, another culture, another light or lack of light. Well, sometimes lots of light and sometimes little light, and definitely that changed his life, and that he he learned a lot about seeing the world, perceiving the world, but also he learned a lot about perceiving himself. And there's definitely a change in his writing poetry during these years here. And he also, as I told you, he learned Swedish, and he made a great work of something that we shouldn't neglect, which is a very important part of his work. He made a lot of translations. He translated more than 100 poems from Swedish and around 30 poets. And not only, well, he was helped by many Swedish friends, and of course, his wife Kerstin helped him just seeing everything is properly done. Yes, there's no mystics here. He learned every single line, and I must say, apart, if it were only, I mean, of course, I enjoy wonderfully what he writes, his own poetry, but if it were only for his translations of Edith Södergran, I would be completely and absolutely grateful to him. I mean, really, I owe him Edith Södergran, and that's a great thing to say. I owe you Edith Södergran. What else, right? Really, he pity I can read Swedish, but I think he captures the thing because the poetry of Edith Södergran comes straight to your heart and it demolishes you through his translation and really wow. So he really somehow some magical, I don't know how, but he made it. And just if it were for that, that would be great. You gave Edith Södergran to all these Spanish speaking countries, and but then these other things. So that's the reason why we celebrate You see this, especially in Sweden, and especially in Lund, Javier Sologuren. But the thing is, not only why we celebrate it here, and it's of course around the year or so, but why do we celebrate Sologuren anywhere in the world? And what's the point? Why we all readers everywhere should celebrate Sologuren? What does he have that we still read him and reread him? He's still near us. We remember him. We read him. We share our time with him. Well, the idea is that we may say, really, that Javier Sologuren incarnates, embodies the figure of the poet. Really, Sologuren is a poet. He's the symbol of what a poet is, what a poet should be, what a poet is. And a total poet means a poet as a whole, not just part of it, but in all the phases, all the aspects, all sides of the poet, he is so. Poet, so it's Sologuren is poetry in all his ways and aspects. His main work is called Vida Continua, say continuous life or continuing life or both. So he wrote several books, not many poems, several books, each one with a different title, but it was called Vida Continua, and then it all together is named, he wanted it to be entitled so, Vida Continua. So Vida Continua is the whole of his work. And, and that's very important. I mean, he's thinking of his whole work about something continuous and coherent. And in a way, there's a connection with his friend and an admired poet and also lecturer in Mexico, the Spanish Jorge Guillén, also with his Cántico, which is coming more and more, but it's the same, getting bigger, but with a great coherence. And Solgon, in a way, does the same. Everything, the whole of Vida Continua is a whole. It's a safe whole, really intertwined and connected. And this name is really important. Vida continua. It's life continuous. This is a name for a poetry production, for poetry work. That makes a lot of sense, especially in Sologuren's case, because in Sologuren there's an absolute union of life and poetry, a total absolute coherence. He always thought of poetry as something to preserve life, so that to get the essence of life. So he wouldn't, he didn't write every day and say, "Oh, I'm a poet, so I write my 10 poems every day, whatever, because that's my thing." No, no, poetry is something completely different. He was always feeling the world through poetry. So he'd say he had a poetic gaze to the world or connection to the world, but he only decided to write down what he thought it was needed, what was fundamental. So it's like he wanted to get the essence of things. That's why he enjoyed so much his time in Japan. When he spent some time in Japan. He even got decorated in Japan for his translations of Japanese literature. But he always loved this thing of saying what is essential, not just blah blah, but the real thing. So he was like distilling life into the essence, like a perfume. So in perfume, you just need to smell it, and then it opens also inside you. And that happens with Sologuren. So he took down only what deserved to be recorded and preserved. And then with, let's say, about 50 years of publishing, more years working, writing, it's all about 350 pages.
nothing else. But then what else? You say all of John of the Cross is this, all of Garcilaso is this. And we need no more. And Sologurin is that kind of poet. Also, with you look at Emilio Adolfo Westphalen or Jorge Eduardo Eyelson. And by the way, it's very interesting that the ones he said he admires first, said, I admire how Westphalen works. I admire how Eyelson works. Because they just, if I have something to say, I say it. If not, not. I'll wait. Things are coming. It's all right. I only write what should be written. So, we may say that he, as I said, distillates life. He makes a concentrate of it all. And then, with this concentrate, he puts this concentrated life into his poems to share it, to share himself with the reader, which is exactly what we need when we read, and when it makes us feel really in a straight conversation with any kind of artist. You see that we work with great artists. Somehow there's a connection in which we think that he's only talking to us or she. Remember, I don't know if you heard about that, this novelist Antonio Lobo Antunes from Portugal, and he said, why do people say they like Chekhov or Tolstoy? Because he only wrote for me. No one else is allowed to enjoy this. And that's a very, very reader thing. And then let's get to this word reader, because not above all, but intertwined with everything, Sologuren is an amazing reader. He's a childlike reader, which is the best way to be a reader. Like, suppose you remember in Clarice Lispector's Felicidade Clandestina. It's the relation with the book and you. And then Sologuren shares. He wants to share, so he becomes the book. So I can be with you wherever you are, but I'm in the book. So here's me. You can go eat it and drink it and talk, feel it inside you. This is my present for you. This is my self-put book, put in made book. That's for you. So he looks for this is life in essence, which goes to be a poetry in essence, or an essential poetry, as you like. So we may say like this in this Möbius line, or there's a ribbon. It's life, which is poetry, which is life, and so on. So it's not life which becomes poetry, poetry becomes life. No, it's life, poetry, life, poetry, life, poetry. And in fact, we have this in Sologur, in this poetry which is pure life, and then life which is pure poetry. Both things together. In fact, his we will say that his poetry is a chronicle of a poet's life, like this group of leader, this Japanese Dichter Levin. So it's the life of a poet made into poetry. That's his poetry. He said it wonderfully. Let me translate you. He said, the poet's life is just a mixing, a moving mixture, because it's moving. It's dynamic, not static. A dynamic mixture of life and word. So it's life and word together, moving, moving, just uh, feeding each other and always gazing at each other's eyes and all the time, but moving, moving. It's both grow together, like a plant and an ivy. Whatever this go to two plants together, it goes together. Of course, some other poets, a poet should read especially, and they see these are the same frequency, like the radio frequency. No, it's like you get the frequency, and if you don't get the right frequency, you don't get to listen to anything. But if you get the right frequency, you understand. And Jorge Guillen, the Spanish Jorge Guillen, exactly when he received this Vida Continua, and I must say I really enjoyed that some of the Sologuren's books that have been in my hands were from this Jorge Guillen's archive in Valladolid. So it was with dedications, everything. They were part of the best part of this archive, Jorge Guillen's archive. And and Jorge Guillen said he commented this Vida Continua, the first editions, because in the 1971 he said about Sologuren, Vida Continua, poesía sin interrupción, meaning this continuous life of Sologuren means uninterrupted life. Sorry, poetry. This continuous life means continuous poetry. Who could see that? Who could read that? A great poet like Jorge Guillen. He saw it straight. We are being this vida continua is poesía continua, poetry with no interruption, poetry all the time. It's like this life is breathing poetry, breathe more poetry. Sologuren's way of looking at the world is very like a very childlike, like a curious child. In fact, well, there's no real poet who is not a child in his heart. Of course, you grow up and you should learn lots of things. You should, of course, but there must be part of a child inside, and to see things, let's say, virginally, like not saying like you've seen it many times. Yep, it's different. What Shklovsky said about this Australian, they change things. Things are new, and look at them as a child, and definitely, the look of Sologuren is a child's look. You can see it in everything. When he relates something, when he talks about another poet, talks about in an anecdote, it's absolutely a child talking about his enchanted. We say even enchanted with. You see, this is great. And then I had the chance talking with Claudio the other day about to corroborate these things. No, he was enjoying just a piece of meat. Said, "How this is great," and someone's going, "Oh, this is beautiful." Really trying to get what life is offering us, which is not that's not easy. That's not easy at all. That's a gift. So his way of being a poet is a way of having an the time and all year long, all the time, poetical perception of the world. So he said also very wonderfully, he said he was just like he was living poetically. And he says, it's not about only writing. He says, I may spend long periods without writing a single word. But that doesn't mean that I'm not doing poetry. Another poet who shares birthday, the 100th birthday this year, is Jaime Sáenz from Bolivia. Uh, he's the poet in Bolivia in the 20th century. And he was talking not for about himself, but about another poet, about poet Avila. And he said, Avila is a poet even when he's not writing. He's a poet because he is a poet. He breathes like a poet. Everything he does, like saying, hi, this hi is poetry. Of course, he didn't say it's about himself. He said that about Avila. But as I told you, it's the frequency. It's the thing. And that's the same thing. It's a way to live. Sologuren's work has, let's say, a triple, it's triple-fold, has triple variety. Completely together, it's a whole. We may severe it or part it in three parts. The first is just writing poetry, straight writing poetry, it's creation. Second is translating not only poetry, but many poetry, translating, which he many times calls recreation. Because I'm not creating, I'm recreating, but it's recreation. So it's to get not what it says, but what is inside. So it's a recreation. So it's like you lyophilize, make it dry, and again make it flower. So it's a strange thing. And the third part is his work as an editor and a publisher. And literally, I will tell you about that. Literally, printer, the printing things. Um, and that was for him. It was that was great because he had a little publishing house, and for him that was the thing of really making the whole of the book. I mean, not only the writing, but I really dispose how it's gonna be like, and let's say geometrically or typographically, and even I do it with my hands. So it's completely it's a proper artisan work in the whole process, not just writing, the whole of it, design it, everything. And as you see, many of these two parts are ways of being a reader because the translator is the best reader, and he said so. What does a translator do? He wants to share something that impressed him as a reader. Why do you translate? Well, because there's publishing houses, there's not such money to translate. All right, but in poetry, when you choose to translate, you choose. You choose. I want to share what? Something which really struck me. It's so great that I want to share it with my friends. My friend, you are my friends. That's all. So anyone who likes this is my friend. That's so. It's I want to share this. It's so wonderful. It's, you have to know. It's like I read Edith Södergran. Man, you have to read Edith Södergran. There's no translation. I will do one. It's a reading from the heart. And he says something very interesting also. He said, translation is a wonderful exercise of reading criticism. Because, I mean, even if you don't publish it, but only when you translate, you go deep inside it. And it's the best reader is a translator because you go through and through it and say, and it's like you're being like the ghost of the writers is inside you because you start to write or get the exactly you see the good points and also the weaknesses in the original because you are so inside it. You get he always does so. Should be better to do so, but you are so much inside that you see. Oh, and this is oh, this is good. And you are in between the two the two languages. You have to really read inside it. And he said, so this is that helps me a lot also to comment the authors. And of course, when he had a publishing house, of course, he chose what to publish. So it's a way of sharing. And I'll tell you, because we have a special part of it, because his publishing house was really another milestone. So we may say that he was a three-faced coin, which so it's writer, translator, and printer, uh, which is may say mean is a writer or poet and reader, poet and reader, which have in both together an intersection, which is translating. So it's poetry, poet and reader together through translator. So that's why it's like a three-faced coin. He also wrote many essays, short essays or not so short, about different authors, which he liked very much. They're very also very. He's very keen on the special things he see on different authors, non regarding the age, I mean, of the author. He would speak with the same accuracy of a youngster with the first book or second book and with or Gongora. He always worked with the same respect and going straight to the what is the magic inside it. In an interview, he said, reading, poetic writing, and translation have always been three indivisible, inseparable constants in my intellectual work. It's true. It's not that we always have to believe what authors say because authors lie many times. Not Sologuren. And that you just have to confront it. It's clear. It was so. It was so. This total complete whole incarnation of poetry in Sologuren, through Sologuren, is clearly seen in one of his great creations, that is La Rama Florida. That's the flowering branch, flowering twig, as you wish. That was his publishing house, this tiny publishing house. And this is, let me go a bit through this story because it's a story to be told. And it's also originated partly in Sweden. As a, I'm not sure if it as a child, but as a teenager, he had read this anthology of the generation of 27, Spain, prepared by Gerardo Diego. And in this anthology, there were not only the poems, but also some interviews, some explanation about every one of the authors. So Sologuren read it through and through, and then he got to Manuel Alto Laguirre, and then he learned that Laguirre said, "Well, when I was here, I had this little printing house and this publishing house called La Veronica," and then Sologuren said, "Wow, but that's great. So it's a poet, as I said before, doing the whole of it. He's doing a poet that can manage the whole process of it." So, wow, that's a dream. I would love to do that sometime. This is Salto Laguirre. What a great guy. Not only the whole of it, just I want this and with this ink and this type of wow. He thought that he just dreamed of it. Some years later, he came to Sweden. And then I don't know, probably he got some extra money or he had to spare something, but he got the offer. Someone was, "Hey, Sologuren, I have a little printing machine. Would you be interested?" So, well, sure, let me see. So there was an old, what here, an old Minerva. It's a Heidelberg like. This is German Heidelbergs. Tiny, just mainly for cards. This is like for cards for wedding invitations. This kind is just medio features. It's tiny, and with this thing just was thunk, tiny this way. So he had just to you have to put the every time you have to put the types in the paper, prepare, and then pluck. Then put again the paper, clock. Then no, you have to check up if it's still proper or you have put something. So everything right, then clock, one by one. And he had this great idea, beautiful idea of translating pre-Hispanic poetry, texts, well, text but poetry or works. And probably he was inspired also by his friend Arguedas, who was bilingual in Quechua. He said, "Well, I'd like to do these things." And he planned to do that in Sweden, but it was too expensive. I mean, if I had to get something to do this and that, it's a lot of money. It's not just the machine, but then probably some other things to do. And he never forgot about that. But then when the whole family went to Peru, of course, he took his machine to Peru, but I forgot about that. And the first was already one kid, and then were coming the other two. First things, how to earn my living. So I had to look for this. What shall I do? What are we doing? Lecturing. I'll be a lecturer. What else? He started working for several universities, not on one, but just let's see where they can do just some lessons here, there. And there was a machine. I forgot about that. It was at his brother's, Jose, your uncle Jose, garage. It was there in a box. He had forgotten about that. And then he remembered, said, "Oh, but there's a printing machine. Let's see how is it. Maybe we could do something here. But in Sweden, it's really expensive. But maybe not in Peru. Maybe we can do something here." So we opened the box there, took out these metal things, and with all the heat and the humidity of Lima and the tree by whatever, he got it out, and he saw these parts. And the parts he said, "Oh my God, they were like a Giacometti's sculpture. It's like a fuse, but." So they had to repair them, clean them. But they said, Well, we can do something with that. And of course, as a as any intelligent person, as a very intelligent person that he was, he said, we can do this, but we should get some assessment of the people who know. So he asked his friend Jorge Campodónico. So I would like to do this. He said, would you help me? What shall I do? So he gave me the first inspirations of how to work. He said, well, let's go. And then you have to buy some the types, straight the letters, the metal letters. He said, right. It says, I saw this. What is that? Bodoni. Bodoni is beautiful. You know, Bodoni is great. Come on, Pomponico says, all right. Bodoni is great, but it's not for you. Great, but the letters, the fonts are too fragile. You need someone who is very good at that. They may break many times. They're really fragile. You can't work with that. You're gonna spend a lot of money because every time you break one, you need more groups of letters. Doesn't work. I suggest you post-medieval, which is stronger. So he got a post-medieval letter, and then it became the trademark or the watermark of La Rama Florida, this post-medieval, which is really beautiful. And the reason was this is stronger than Bodoni. It works. So he started with that, and yes, he preserved it. Now we can work with that. He had learned something about printing, and he started with his collection. It was very, very nice. And once again, Sweden takes part in it because he was just putting when they prepared the books, which are tiny, really tiny, and he was making one by one. But then you have to sew them. If not, you could like know you know about or have seen the things that João Cabral de Meloneto made. He also had a printing house. Well, like his printing house, his printing, but the it's like booklets, but different just folds put together. So not properly books because it's just sheets put together. But La Rama Florida were real books because they were sewn. And who sewed them? Uh, Kerstin Åkesson. So there was a whole familiar thing. One started with this chunk, chunk, chunk. Then I says, Kerstin, please go with it. It's very nicely and warmly. And as you, well, as every good work, good work done with your brain and your heart and your real will, it was a great work. Started to do wonderful things. And he says something very interesting. He says, we won't be following the prejudice of newness. It's not just new things. Of course, he did new things, but he also made classics and translations. So he put together very different things. So in a way, he said he did like what Bobby Batzlen, the Italian publisher, did when he started Adelphi with Luciano Foà, and then recently and sadly this passed away. The great publisher of Adelphi. Oh, I forgot about his name. Just it was a great pity. It was some days ago. Great, great. I can see his face. When they started with Adelphi in Italy, they said, "Let's let's publish the books we do really like. Nothing else. What we do really like." Calasso, Roberto Calasso. Roberto Calasso. So it was Calasso, Foa, and Bobby Basson. Let's publish the books we really, really do want. We love. We love. So he started with a poetic art by Roger Caillois. And the second, he could do what he had thought, which is a translation of a piece in Quechua by Arguedas. By the way, the name La Rama Florida, this branched, the flowering branch, he took it not from Linné. side, not from the natural world, but from this old Mexican, not only some, but from Mexico, codices in which is like this is like a comic strip, and then the characters when they speak they have something like the words coming out, and it was like a branch flowering, and that was his idea for saying the flowering branch, which is the word. So it's so beautiful. And he had so these translations. He also translated Dylan Thomas and Ungaretti, Eliard, and others. Then some of his these tiny works were some 80 copies, 100 copies, no more, because he had it one by one. Imagine. Got to friends abroad who showed them to another friends who said, I would like to be there. Friends like Neruda, Alberti, who sent straight his little poems. They have to be little. They have to be little because I don't have space, or I don't have straight the letters to make a big thing. But he also published his friends and colleagues of his age, like Carlos Germán Belli. First, he's the one who's the biggest number, 4 books, and then there's 143 books in La Rama Florida. Blanca Varela, Eyelson, not Westphalen, because Westphalen wasn't writing anything. He said, please, Emilio, I don't have nothing. Emilio, nothing. It will come. Poetry comes when she wants. And the rest he got about many of his friends, Salazar Bondi, of course, Salazar Bondi and others. Um, and then, which is also classics, some Fray Luis de Leon. He made once for his the Christmas for Christmas with a poem by Lope de Vega. This is like a card, so it's perfect. And he published the youngsters of Peruvian poetry, because there were some students or so. There was I have he had his net of readers or knowers, connoisseurs. Said, why do you read? Take a look at this. So, well, this is very good. So that's why he published the first of Javier Heró. He published the first book of Antonio Cisneros, of Arturo Corcuera, Luis Hernandez. The first books of all of them were published in his collection. Well, he was a great reader. He is, because poets never die. He is a great reader. He was good. Said, but this is so young. It's in 19. It's the same. It's great. So we put it together. Feliz de Leon, Dylan Thomas, and Luis Hernandez. Perfect. It's all poetry. What's the point? It's poetry. Poetry has no age. It is or it is not. That's all. And he has some very nice and very interesting and funny anecdotes. Sometimes there was some. So he said, poet was also money, whatever. I say you have a great publishing house. I want you to publish my, because you publish these youngsters. You have to publish me also because I'm a great poet. No, sorry, but you have to do it or not. So sorry. And you have money. Great, you have money. No, sorry. That's all. And then he also, it was not always that way. He had to say no, to refuse some amazing things. And you will know why. That's probably you have just thought what was the reason. The reason why. For instance, Enrique Verástegui, the young Enrique Verástegui, very good poet, had his new book. Said, let's say, would like you, master, would like you to publish this. Well, let's say, and say, now, how big is your book? Well, I don't know, 150, 200 pages. Son, sorry, I don't have, I don't have the letters for doing that. So it's just tiny things. I can't publish a book of 150 pages. It doesn't go. And it was worse, even worse with Georgette de Vallejo. She saw this thing, the whole machine, and the beautiful, the wonderful idea. Said, Sologuren, but this is just great. Why don't shall we publish some Vallejo here? Why don't we put España parte de mi este cáliz en poemas humanos? And Sologuri imagines and says, Georgette, that's the best, the nicest thing I've ever heard about my publishing house. But I don't have enough ease. I don't have the letters straight. I don't have the number of letters to publish even poemas humanos. I don't have it. Sorry, this really touched me, and it's really the best thing. I mean, no, I'm my good way, but I just can't physically. I just can't put it together. I don't have ease, enough ease. That's all. That's all. So, as I say, this everything is a part of, as I say, this of sharing the things, and I would like to. This is something very nice. The Yelson. Yelson says something wonderful. Just to go start finishing. Just have some time for a little talk, if you want uh, to go back again. So this it's a whole thing about, as I said, sharing what he read, what so translating or publishing, and what he lived. So his life is a continuous talk, and I mean talk in the best way. It's like or even say a meal together in the, let's say, in the religious way of eating together, like in the mass. It's like this poetic mass of we are together, we are celebrating poetry, which means celebrating life. And sharing, I said, wait, with this convivium, I found this new spice. I'll share it with you. I found this new wine. I'll share it with you. This time I got this wine in my garden. So this some paprika in my garden, so I'll put it and I'll share it to you. So it was a whole bit of in, agape, right? So this is like this love convivium, eating poetry together. And again, I quoted Jorge Guillen. Now we quote Jorge Eduardo Yelson, which says also wonderful things. He said, Javier, because he said, ah, by the way, it's a 10 pages essay by A. Yelson, nothing else. This 10-page paper of A. Yelson about Sologuren is just amazing. Amazing. You may find it. It's in the internet enough. Just let me know. I will send you the thing. It's amazing. Just 10 pages. What? A poet, a reader. What else? And he says, of course, he said, let me not say Sologuren because they were friends from since they were 18 or so. For me, it's Javier. So always speaks about Javier. He says, Javier's poetry is in the utmost luminous instance of a passionate love of life. When life is, again, as it is in his case, always in utmost poetry, poetry of the highest level. And A. Yelson says about that. So just to finish, it's evident that in this great continuous life, continuous poetry, the main milestone is his stay in Sweden. This is a complete change in his life. And of course, it would have been, his poetry would have been in his life. And he himself would have been much, much, probably he would have still been a great poet, but he would have been a very different poet without coming to Lund. And a different person also. Of course, surely a wonderful person as he was, but with different nuances, different varieties of himself. Because here he as I said, he wasn't he changed his way of perceiving, of seeing not only the world, but also himself. Here he changed, as I said, from boy to, let's say, father, to fatherhood, from uh, citizen from Lima, Peruvian, to a universal one, really, really, really open to different cultures and different languages. He had that in seed inside. He had it, he could grow that, if not in a way, but he grew it here. He had that inside, but he grew it here. And as I said, mainly in these 7 years, he just he wrote a book, and the book is this, and it's in photocopy, so it's half of it. This is what he wrote, Otoño en Dechas, in this 7 years here. But as he said, he wrote this, but made a lot of poetry, a lot of, let's say, poetical acts, we should say, through experience, through the contact with the world, through love, mainly love. Love with his wife, love with the child and the children to come. Completely different. It was a step for Sologuren to become Sologuren. So, just to finish with, I would like just to, so this is in Spanish, sorry, but I think you'll get a bit of it. Just finish with three little poems. Usually, he also writes some longer poems, really, really interesting, like Recinto or La Hora. In this Recinto, he gets together Schliemann in Troya. We were speaking about archaeology right now with the Huaqueros in Peru, and that's puts it together for this archaeology and poetry, because it says in a way when you make poetry, you go deep inside your own archaeology, your layers inside you. It makes a wonderful thing with a talk with Schliemann and a Peruvian Huaquero, and in a way it's a great metaphor, and not only in more things, because poets don't mean they are, as Archibald MacLeish said. It always keeps growing in your inside as readers. So this is wonderful, for instance, or La Hora, but usually he makes tiny poems, and I will read these three ones first. Here, glasses. Uh, I'm going to read three really, really Swedish Peruvian ones. As I'm going to read the ones dedicated to his children. The first one goes for the kids, Gerardo and Claudio. And I don't know. I think some of his poems are translated into Swedish, but not many. For me, of course, the whole reason of this is to make you just go back to Sologuren. If this helps to that someone may want to translate, that would be great. So, because there are not so many of his poems. I haven't found, but probably there are some reviews here or anthologies, but not the whole book of Sologuren. That would be great. So hope you. I want to encourage you to do so. It's, of course, it's not easy, but sure you'll do it wonderfully. And this one goes for his sons. And then was for Vivek. Por ti, Gerardo, y por ti, Claudio, hijos míos, vuelvo a ser lo que fui. Canta en mi corazón una luz nueva, una vieja canción que desoí. Hoy me asomo al asombro y al confiado estar en el mundo. Claudio, en tus ojos, en los tuyos, Gerardo. And then for Viveka, so he's not inside the quoted, but it says, para mi hija Viveka, porque cogí la mariposa no en el jardín, sino en el sueño, porque en mi almohada oí cantar al río, al crepúsculo orar, porque el cielo breve de la flor me llevó lejos, porque el niño aún que fui, que a veces soy, despierta y ve la mariposa volar en el jardín, que ya no sueño, el paso de los años. And let's finish with the origin of everything, which is Cherstin. And it's the poem called exactly Kerstin. Por el tiempo se alzaban los árboles y el cielo. Yo escribía con lápiz, contigo, con silencio, palabras como fuentes, fuentes como misterios de albas y atardeceres caídos en el tiempo. Yo escribía contigo, contigo y en silencio. Gracias. Just in time, right?
Thank you very much for your inspirational talk.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about what is the role of Sologuren en el Perú literario today.
Well, I'm not sure about that because I'm not living in Peru for many years now, but I can tell you for sure, and I'm completely sure about this, that his role is very important in the Peruvian literature of the future.
That means that he's loved and he's read and he's there.
And he will be read. Probably the thing is, and this is part of it, the celebrations are part of trying to encourage people to read him. But for sure, there's some, well, you all know, there's some magic way in which comes what Gabriel Said, the Mexican, said about this happy, this merry encounter, merry meeting between reader and the work that was waiting for him. I'm sure Sologuren's works are waiting for many people to make them happy. Sometimes the problem right now is that there are so many so-called poets and so many information. Everything is in the internet. Yeah, now look for it. Look for it. Because there's so many, but there's some way that someday you hear a word, you hear something. Could be a lecture, could be you just happen to meet Sologuren in a review, or someone says about Sologuren something, and they said, "Who's this Sologuren?" Let's go. Because this is, life has this strange ways. But I don't know how much poets are reading. Well, of course, if they are not reading, they are not poets. But many people think that they shouldn't read because it destroys their own style. Sologuren said, by the way, something wonderful about the influences. He said, "Thank God, I have many, many thousands of influences, and then they all have got together, have mixed and fused in a general gray tone, like a stone. And then my little irisations, say, that's my contribution. Together with this blue, and that's, but this is pieces of color. This is mine. But this has got all mixed together. So it's part of it all. I think it's a wonderful way to say it. And as a way part of tradition and avant-garde. He says something also very interesting about, he's speaking about Carlos Germán Belli. You know, I was saying that before, that we shouldn't always believe what authors say. They lie many times, but when they don't lie is when they speak about what they like. They never lie. When you see speak truly, says, "Not you, I see you. You are that reader." And he was in. There's also this thing of frequency, of connecting. So if you're speaking about that, it's because you are that so also. And he said about Carlos Germán Belli, when Carlos Germán Belli went into the academia in Peru, and then he wrote about Germán Belli. And he said, Germán Belli really gets something amazing, which is putting together the whole tradition and what's new. So he's really, in fact, avant-garde and tradition together. As you know, Herman Bailey with all these sextinas and also Ada Cibernética. So it means puts all things that he does so. And Sologuren does so also. So Sologuren in this new things and just putting the as one the poem I said the title is at the end and he works with the types, but he also makes calligrams. He makes carmina figurata, and he had seen in this technoscopia, technopagia. He had read that his of the Simias, Teocrito, Simias de Rhodes. He had seen these old calligrams, and he does things of the kind, but he makes them new. It's not a copy. It flowers in him. He will keep flowering.
Thank you very much for your talk. It's very inspiring talk. What's the place of the of poetry in Peruvian literature if you compare to the place of the novels?
Again, I don't know how to say. Um, it's not a thing of Peru only. I prefer to speak about the Spanish-speaking world because I mean we are all in touch. Of course, Rulfo read Borges, Borges read Cortázar, and that's the point. You don't just don't read. Oh, I'm the great poet in Madrid, let's say, or in Chiquito. No, we are working, and that's why we have such an amazing literature. But sure, it's novels and narrative in general are much more famous everywhere. As for my own experience, really there are some 3 or 4 parts in the world in which they really appreciate poets are something special in the way they should be, which is in the Spanish-speaking world, Colombia. That's where you read before 2,000 people in a station. It's only Colombia. And in Europe, it's Balkan. I mean, it's all this in Serbia, in Macedonia. They really it's poet and say, wow, yeah, whatever. I don't understand you. It's all right. I want to listen. Like in this Stregal, this I don't care about the violence. It's a poet, and I know it's a magic thing. Also in the Arab world, because the poets are a poet is a poet, and also in the East, so the Far East. As for all the things, well, people, how many people? It all depends. I mean, the general reader probably goes straight to novels. And they may say, no, poetry, I don't understand that, or it's such a nonsense. Mainly because everybody is a poet now, so it's 90% is nonsense. But it also needs something special. But it does something clear. Anywhere in the world, if someone writes poetry and novels, he prefers to be called poet. And poet is above everything. Right? It's not my thing. It's so. That's the way it goes. Like Alvaro Munzer, no, I'm a poet. First poet. And if not, not. I say, no, I wrote some poems, but I'm not a poet. I'm a novelist. And I recognize it. I wish I were a poet. So for the real inner core heart readers, poetry is above. But then how many readers are we speaking about? So it's a general thing. Of course, more novels. But reader, or a reader, poetry.
Hello, thank you again. um, I'm just wondering whether the political situation, maybe in the entire South America now, does that influence the reading poetry or not?
It shouldn't.
The tendency
It shouldn't.
in dire times, you turn
It
from
shouldn't.
philosophy to maybe poetry and so forth.
It shouldn't. Poetry is more important.
It should.
No, poetry is more important than anything. Poetry is life straight, not a part of it. Let's say about Sologuren. Sologuren speaks many times.
He's
They were
apolitical, right?
what?
He's apolitical. He's not political. in his poetry?
He's not political, but he's a zone politicon as we all are. I mean, he says there was at the time we were speaking about that time we were speaking about uh, pure poetry and social poetry. He says that's a stupid thing, and they were, like they want to put you in boxes, right? You're a social poet, you're a pure poet. They say, what a stupid thing is that? All poets are social. I mean, we live in social life, and there's nothing as pure poetry. I mean, everything is mixed, and it's logical. But he never wanted to do something with politics. He never wanted to be used also by politicians. In his life is everything. That doesn't mean that he wasn't really connected with the social problems, really cared about people and how was the situation. He cared about that and he acted about that in his everyday life. He didn't put that in poetry. But if you read it, it is inside. I mean, it's not clearly because the thing is, the poet is not making a sermon. So he always thinks should be a nuance. It is inside. You read it back and see what is he speaking about. And of course, he's meaning this and that, but not as we should do this or not. I won't teach you. I'm a poet. Just read it, but inside there are some things connected with. So it's not that clear. But poetry is, as Juan Ramon Jimenez said, poetry is the almost said. But said, what is said, too much said is rhetoric. Said is poetry, prose, and poetry is the almost said. Read, and you will find everything inside. Thanks a lot. Something important.
Thank you all. Thank you all a lot for this time, precious time of each of you. Uh, in the name of the Embassy of Peru, we want first, and as one of the poets of our beloved Javier Sologuren, uh, uh, we can say something that we should say at the beginning as a title of our lecturer. You, of course, discover that he is a poet, and we want that nobody more special than Claudio, who I let teacher invite him in the name of the family of poet Javier Sologuren. He would like to leave the collection, fully collection of his work to the university and also for the Center of Studies of Literature. This material that I am sure it could be useful for the students and the teachers.
For the, well, I'm just okay. Thank you very much for all this work and this opportunity to to talk about Javier Sologuren and so his poetry and inspiration reach all people. Uh, this is a good thing, cultural. And here we have the whole collection of the poetry of Javier Sologuren. So it's a pleasure for me to give you and the university in the name of my brothers, Gerardo, Viveca, and me.
And finally, this summary also of the proper poetry of Javier Sologuren, who was inspired, as our lecturer explained us, especially for his stage in this country, and also with the heart to his family, to his wife, to you, teacher, in the name of the family Sologuren in Sweden. Tack så mycket.